The profound messages behind Isaiah's prophecies you need to know. Picture this: you're standing in the middle of a vast desert. The scorching sun pressing down. The horizon blurred by waves of heat. A lone figure emerges. Walking with purpose. Carrying nothing but the weight of a message that could alter the course of history. That figure is Isaiah. A prophet who spoke not just to his people, but to every one of us. Across the centuries, his words ripple through time, challenging us to reconsider everything we thought we understood about faith, hope, and the divine purpose for humanity. Isaiah wasn't just speaking to kings or the elite. He was speaking to you and me, ordinary people searching for meaning in the chaos of life. But here's the question I want to ask you: if a message from thousands of years ago could reveal the deepest truths about your life today, would you listen? Stay with me, because this is where it gets profound. Isaiah's prophecies aren't merely ancient words written on crumbling scrolls. They are a mirror, reflecting the core struggles of humanity: pride, fear, rebellion, and the desperate longing for redemption. Let's start with one of the most hauntingly beautiful passages. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. Can you feel the weight of that? It's not just poetry, it's a promise. Think about your own life. Have you ever felt like you were walking in darkness, confused, lost, unsure of where to turn? Maybe it's the fear of failure, the pain of broken relationships, or the relentless pressure to be someone you're not. Isaiah speaks to that very place, offering a vision of hope that transcends the darkness. But here's the twist: the light he talks about isn't just some abstract idea. It's a person. Isaiah's words foreshadow the coming of Christ, the Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. These aren't just titles, they're lifelines. Let's break it down. A wonderful counselor means you're never alone in your struggles. The mighty God means that no matter how powerless you feel, there is a strength greater than anything you can imagine, ready to carry you. But let me ask you this: when was the last time you truly trusted something greater than yourself? Isaiah also confronts one of humanity's deepest flaws: pride. He writes, "Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and clever in their own sight." Let that sink in. How often do we rely on our own wisdom, thinking we've got it all figured out, only to end up more lost than ever? It's like building a house on sand. Sure, it looks solid at first, but when the storm comes, everything collapses. Now, let's get practical. What does it mean to let go of pride and embrace humility? Maybe it's forgiving someone who doesn't deserve it. Maybe it's admitting that you don't have all the answers and being okay with that. Isaiah challenges us to see that humility isn't weakness, it's the doorway to strength. But here's a challenge for you: what would change in your life if you stopped clinging to your own wisdom and started trusting in something higher? As we dive deeper, Isaiah's vision of the suffering servant becomes a centerpiece. He writes, "He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering, and familiar with pain." This isn't just about Christ's physical suffering, it's about the emotional and spiritual anguish of bearing the weight of humanity's brokenness. Think about that for a moment. How often do we feel misunderstood, rejected, or burdened by pain? Isaiah reminds us that we're not alone in those moments. Christ doesn't just sympathize with our suffering, he enters into it. But here's where it gets even more profound. Isaiah's prophecies reveal that suffering isn't meaningless. It's a path to redemption. Imagine your greatest pain, whether it's a loss, a betrayal, or a failure. Now, What if I told you that even that pain could be transformed into something beautiful? Something redemptive? It's not about minimizing your suffering, it's about finding purpose within it. Let's bring this into today's world. We live in a culture obsessed with avoiding pain at all costs. We numb ourselves with distractions, social media, binge watching, endless scrolling, anything to avoid facing the void. But Isaiah calls us to a different path. A harder path. One that requires us to confront our pain head-on. Because it's in that confrontation that transformation happens. So, I'll ask you, what pain in your life are you running from? And what might happen if you faced it instead? Isaiah also speaks powerfully about justice. A theme that feels especially urgent in our fractured world. He writes, "Learn to do right, seek justice. Defend the oppressed. Take up the cause of the fatherless, plead the case of the widow." These words aren't just moral suggestions, they're a call to action. Justice, for Isaiah, isn't about punishment, it's about restoration. Think about the injustices you see around you. Maybe it's systemic inequality, environmental destruction, or the quiet suffering of someone close to you. What would it look like to embody Isaiah's call to justice in your own life? Maybe it starts with something small, standing up for someone who can't stand up for themselves. Speaking truth in love. Or simply listening to someone's story. But here's the deeper question: what kind of world could we create if we all lived out Isaiah's vision of justice? As we near the end of this first part, let's circle back to where we began, the promise of light in the darkness. Isaiah's prophecies don't shy away from the harsh realities of life. He acknowledges the darkness, the pain, the brokenness. But he also points to a hope that is unshakable. A light that no darkness can overcome. That light is Christ. So, let me leave you with this thought: what if the hope you've been searching for isn't something you need to find, but something, or someone, that has been waiting for you all along? The suffering servant and the power of redemption, finding meaning in our pain. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine standing at the foot of a hill. At the top, there is a cross, a symbol so powerful, so layered with meaning, that it has inspired countless hearts while also confounding minds. This cross is central to Isaiah's prophecies, especially his portrayal of the suffering servant. What Isaiah presents is not just a vision of pain, but a roadmap to redemption, a guide to understanding how the deepest wounds in our lives can be transformed into sources of unimaginable strength. Isaiah writes, "He was pierced for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities, the punishment that brought us peace was on him. And by his wounds, we are healed." Pause here. This isn't just a poetic statement, it's a paradox that invites us to rethink everything we know about suffering and healing. How can wounds bring healing? How can punishment lead to peace? To understand this, let's bring it into our lives. We've all experienced wounds, emotional, spiritual, or even physical. Maybe it was a betrayal by someone you trusted. Maybe it was a failure that left you questioning your worth. Or perhaps it's the quiet, gnawing sense of emptiness that nothing seems to fill. Whatever your wounds are, Isaiah tells us that they are not the end of the story. But let me ask you, what would your life look like if you truly believed that even your deepest pain had a purpose? The suffering servant is more than a figure of sacrifice. He is a symbol of how love and humility can triumph over hatred and pride. Think about it: Christ, as foreshadowed by Isaiah, didn't fight violence with violence. He didn't repay insult with insult. Instead, he chose the path of ultimate humility and love, taking on the burdens of others, even those who mocked and rejected him. In a world that often glorifies strength and dominance, Isaiah's vision flips the script. True strength. He shows us lies in vulnerability and selflessness. Now, this isn't easy to live out. Imagine someone wrongs you deeply, cuts you to the core. The natural response is to strike back, to seek justice, to make them feel the pain they caused. But Isaiah points us to a different way. He was oppressed and afflicted. Yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter. And as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. Can you imagine staying silent in the face of injustice? Not out of weakness, but out of a profound inner strength. What would happen if we applied even a fraction of this principle to our lives? Could forgiveness be the key to breaking cycles of pain and resentment? Let's explore forgiveness for a moment. It's one of the hardest things to do. Yet it's also one of the most transformative. When we hold on to bitterness, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. Forgiveness, on the other hand, frees us, not necessarily from the memory of pain, but from its power over us. Isaiah's suffering servant embodies this principle, absorbing the pain of others and transforming it into a source of peace. What if you could do the same in your own life? What if the person you forgave wasn't just the one who hurt you, but also yourself? Now, let's shift our focus to the collective impact of suffering and redemption. Isaiah's prophecies don't just address individuals, they speak to communities, nations, and the world. The Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Isaiah writes, "This isn't just about personal sin, it's about the weight of collective brokenness, wars, oppression, greed, and all the ways humanity falls short of its potential." We see this brokenness everywhere today. From the division in our communities to the environmental crises threatening our planet. Isaiah's vision reminds us that redemption isn't just about fixing what's wrong in our own lives, it's about being part of something much bigger. What would it look like if we, as individuals, embraced the role of peacemakers, healers, and restorers in a fractured world? And here's the bigger question: what kind of legacy are you leaving for those who come after you? Isaiah's suffering servant also teaches us about the cost of love. Love, real love, is sacrificial. It's not about what you can get, it's about what you're willing to give. Think about a parent who sacrifices their dreams so their child can have a better future. Think about a friend who stands by you in your darkest hour, even when it's inconvenient. That's the kind of love Isaiah points to, the kind that transforms lives. But let me ask you, are you living a life that reflects this kind of love? Or are you holding back? One of the most profound aspects of Isaiah's vision is the idea that suffering can lead to transformation. Not just for the one who suffers, but for everyone around them. This is the essence of redemption. The suffering servant doesn't just endure pain for its own sake, he transforms it into something redemptive. Something that brings healing and hope. What if your own struggles could do the same? What if the challenges you face today are shaping you into someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate? To bring this home, let's look at a modern example. Imagine someone who has faced unimaginable loss, perhaps the death of a loved one or the collapse of a lifelong dream. At first, the pain is overwhelming. But over time, they channel that pain into something meaningful. Maybe they start a foundation to help others, write a book that inspires millions, or simply become a source of strength for those around them. This is the power of redemption. It doesn't erase the pain, but it gives it purpose. Isaiah's message also calls us to action. It's not enough to read these words or even to understand them. Transformation requires action. "Here am I, send me," Isaiah famously declares. This isn't just a moment of personal surrender, it's a call to live with purpose. What does that look like for you? Maybe it's volunteering in your community. Standing up for someone who can't stand up for themselves. Or simply being present for a friend who needs you. Whatever it is. Isaiah's words challenge us to ask, what am I doing with the time and gifts I've been given? As we close this part, let's reflect on the heart of Isaiah's prophecy, the power of love, humility, and sacrifice to transform not just individuals, but the world. The suffering servant story isn't just a story, it's an invitation. An invitation to live differently. To see pain not as an end, but as a beginning. And to embrace a hope that is unshakable. So, I leave you with this question: what if the redemption you seek is already within you? Waiting to be discovered and shared with the world? Isaiah's vision of a new world, living with purpose, peace, and unshakable hope. Imagine standing on a mountaintop at dawn. The sky begins to glow with the first rays of sunlight, painting the world in hues of gold and crimson. This is the image Isaiah gives us of a new world, a world filled with peace, justice, and the unshakable hope of something greater. His prophecies don't just stop at redemption, they point to restoration, a complete renewal of everything broken. But here's the question: what would it take to believe that such a world is possible? And how would you live if you knew it was? Isaiah's vision of a restored world begins with this promise: the wolf will live with the lamb. The leopard will lie down with the goat. They will neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain. These words are more than poetic imagery. They're a declaration that peace, true, lasting peace, is not a dream but a destiny. Think about it, a world without violence, hatred, or division. It's almost impossible to imagine, isn't it? And yet, Isaiah tells us it's not just possible, it's inevitable. But how do we get there? Isaiah's vision isn't about waiting passively for a better world to arrive. It's about living in a way that reflects the world we hope for. Take the idea of peace. For example, peace isn't just the absence of conflict, it's the presence of harmony. It's choosing to love when it's easier to hate. To forgive when it's easier to hold a grudge. What if you started living that way today? What if you became the embodiment of the peace you long to see in the world? Isaiah also speaks to the heart of justice. See, a king will reign in righteousness and rulers will rule with justice. Justice, in Isaiah's vision, is about setting things right, not just punishing wrongdoers, but restoring what has been broken. It's about lifting up the oppressed, healing the wounded, and bringing light to places of darkness. Think about the injustices in your own life or the world around you. What role could you play in bringing Isaiah's vision to life? And here's the deeper question: what would justice look like if it started with you? As we explore Isaiah's vision of restoration, we come to one of the most profound promises: behold, I will create new heavens and a new earth. The former things will not be remembered, nor will they come to mind. This isn't just a promise of a better future, it's a promise of total renewal. Imagine a world where pain, loss, and regret no longer define us, a world where every tear is wiped away. But here's the challenge: can you let go of the past to embrace the future that Isaiah speaks of? Let's bring this into a practical context. One of the greatest barriers to living with purpose and hope is our inability to let go of what's behind us, our mistakes, our failures, our pain. Isaiah's promise of a new world is also a call to leave the old world behind. Maybe it's time to forgive yourself for something you've been holding on to. Maybe it's time to let go of resentment that's been eating away at your joy. What would it feel like to truly start fresh? Isaiah also reminds us of the importance of purpose. He writes, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you." These words aren't just about the divine, they're about you. Each of us carries a light, unique gifts, talents, and passions meant to illuminate the world. But here's the question, are you hiding your light? Or are you letting it shine? Living with purpose doesn't mean you have to change the entire world overnight. It starts with small, intentional actions. Maybe it's showing kindness to someone who doesn't expect it. Maybe it's using your talents to create something beautiful or meaningful. Whatever it is, Isaiah's words challenge us to rise up and live boldly, knowing that our lives have significance. One of the most striking aspects of Isaiah's vision is its focus on joy. He writes, "You will go out in joy and be led forth in peace. The mountains and hills will burst into song before you, and all the trees of the field will clap their hands." This isn't just about fleeting happiness, it's about a deep, abiding joy that comes from living in harmony with the divine and with each other. Think about your own life. When was the last time you felt true joy, not just a moment of pleasure, but a profound sense of peace and gratitude? Isaiah reminds us that joy isn't something we achieve, it's something we receive when we align ourselves with the vision of a restored world. But here's the challenge, what's holding you back from experiencing that kind of joy? And what would it take to reclaim it? Isaiah's prophecies also call us to live with hope. Hope, in Isaiah's vision, isn't wishful thinking, it's a confident expectation of what's to come. It's believing that no matter how dark the night, the dawn is always on its way. But hope requires courage. It requires us to trust in something greater than ourselves, even when everything around us feels uncertain. So let me ask you, what is the source of your hope? And is it strong enough to carry you through life's storms? As we near the end of this journey through Isaiah's prophecies, let's reflect on what it all means for us today. Isaiah's vision isn't just a promise of a better future, it's an invitation to live differently now. To embrace peace, pursue justice, find joy, and live with unshakable hope. It's a call to rise above the struggles of the present and become part of something much greater. So, here's my final question for you. If you knew that your life could be a reflection of Isaiah's vision, a light in the darkness, a source of hope and restoration, how would you live? The choice is yours. Isaiah's words have been waiting for thousands of years, not just to inspire, but to transform. Will you let them?